Welcome to Mountain Stream TV. Today is the 6th of January 2026, and this is one of our series of interviews that we're calling the Community Preservation Forum. My colleague Avram Friedman, who's on the other side of the camera, and I have been doing this now for about 6 months, and we've interviewed the representatives of almost 20 nonprofit organizations and government agencies who provide services for the people of Jackson County and other nearby communities. So we generally have focused in on groups that are working in the areas of health, nutrition, education, and housing, and we from time to time have gone into other areas. Today, I guess it's kind of an education thing. We have Callie Moore with us from Mountaintrue, which is an organization that covers quite a big area of western North Carolina. She's the Southwestern Regional Director, and I'm not sure what counties. You can tell us about what counties you cover and what your job is, and a lot more about Mountaintrue. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you both for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to tell y'all and others in the community about Mountaintrue and our work. Mountaintrue is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we cover 26 counties in western North Carolina and North Georgia. There's 2 counties in North Georgia. Like Ron said, I am the Southwestern office director, basically, for Mountaintrue, and so we are the 6 southwesternmost counties in North Carolina, plus those 2 North Georgia counties that I mentioned. And just to, get your curiosity tamed here, the 2 counties in North Georgia, we have 3 rivers that flow into North Carolina. They flow north into North Carolina. And so that's why we include those 2 counties in North Georgia. We don't want to chop off the headwaters of the Hiwassee and Notley and other rivers that are in those 2 counties and flowing towards western North Carolina. So Mountaintrue champions clean water, resilient forests, and healthy communities throughout that southern Blue Ridge region, those 26 counties. And we're based in Asheville, but again, we have an office in Murphy, North Carolina that covers these southwestern counties, including Jackson County. And so I can talk a little bit about what we're doing in each program area, and then maybe kind of zooming into Jackson County. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. So in the Clean Water Program, we have a very extensive monitoring program for rivers, lakes, and streams in the whole territory. And there's regional staff that are operating in various parts of the area. And we also have 4 river keepers as part of our program: the French Broad, Green, and Watauga river keepers. And so we do E. coli monitoring, and we have a program in the summertime called Swim Guide, where we sample every week in the middle of the week, and so that you have the results in time for the weekend. I think we're over 100 sites now throughout the region. And we also do other types of water quality monitoring to just keep tabs on what's going on with water quality in our rivers, lakes, and streams. And when we find problems, we work to figure out what's causing them, and then we work to work with others and partners and landowners and industry owners and whoever it is to get those problems resolved. And so that's kind of our clean water program in the nutshell. After Helene, we started a pilot program of employing out-of-work river guides and other outdoor recreation industry folks to help with the cleanup of our rivers. And the state of North Carolina then saw that work, and in August of this year, I believe it was, or it's a new year, isn't it? August of 2025, we received a $10 million contract to hire, I believe it's 8 teams across all of the Helene impacted area to continue river cleanup. It seems the Corps of Engineers did quite a bit of cleanup, but it was limited to areas that they could access from roadways primarily. And so there was a lot of material that was in the floodplains of the rivers, particularly the French Broad, that went down into areas that are popular for recreation, but weren't really addressed by the FEMA efforts. And so our teams are out there it's an 18-month contract, and they're out there working on that. Mm-hmm. So that's the Clean Water Program. So Resilient Forests, we monitor all the projects that happen on the national forests and on our public lands, and we help to get people involved when there's a public comment period where people can provide input to agencies like the Forest Service for the management of our public lands. And we also do habitat restoration projects where we remove non-native invasive plants and plant native trees and shrubs. And so just things to keep our forests healthy and resilient in the face of climate change.
So that's in the national forests themselves,
Mm-hmm.
not just private land, or do you do both?
We primarily work on public land, but it's not just the national forest. So when we get into the Jackson County projects, you'll hear that we work on greenways and parks at the local level.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of that work that's going on. I mean, we don't really go on to private land. I mean, I'm not saying we haven't. We have received contracts sometimes, especially for agricultural lands, where we have worked on private lands in the same way, but most of our work is on public lands, particularly our volunteer work base. So, and then healthy communities, we help towns, counties advocate for sidewalks, greenways, bike paths, just alternative types of transportation. We also do, just like with the Forest Service projects, we comment on NC Department of Transportation projects, and Mountaintrue actually had a pretty significant role in the 107 project planning here in Jackson County. And so we work on those types of things, but we also in early, I think it was more in 2004 that this happened, we hired a housing and transportation director. So Mountaintrue actually does also work on housing. I heard you mention that in your list of topics of concern. And so we do, in our Healthy Communities program, we do some work on housing, particularly to get, to prevent kind of the sprawl of, just housing out into the countryside where it's harder to get emergency services and amenities and infrastructure and things like that, and has a tendency to reduce open space. And so that's the primary focus is on, development in the right locations, I guess you could say. But we have also worked on affordable housing issues, and that's a huge issue in this area. I'm sure would agree.
Yep.
So that's kind of the general overview of our 3 major program areas. We also, I don't want to forget, so I'm going to mention it right now. We have a program within Mountaintrue called the Creation Care Alliance, and this is where faith communities can get involved in Mountaintrue's work. And so there is a network. Creation Care Alliance is basically a network of faith communities all throughout that Southern Blue Ridge region that kind of covenant with Mountaintrue and help support our initiatives, and we help support their initiatives, and then they can network together to see what other faith communities are doing with regard to green energy or support for the environment, what have you. So I wanted to be sure to mention that.
Right. Okay. So that's kind of the broad overview. A couple of things that, I was wondering about was like water sampling. And you said there was a swim guide. How do people find out about that?
So, first of all, I want to say here in Jackson County, so we do have a huge territory, as we've already established. And so Mountaintrue, I consider Mountaintrue a gap filler when it comes to some of these programs, particularly in the clean water program. Here in Jackson County, the Watershed Association for the Tuckasegee River actually runs the swim guide program. So they do exactly the same thing we do in other areas here on the Tuckasegee River in Jackson and Swain. So there is a website. It is swimguide.org, and you can go on there and see all the sites that exist, and you can pick, whichever one you're interested in, knowing whether it's clean or not. You can see the historical record, and then come April, May, I think water probably starts monitoring towards the end of April. We don't start until the week before Memorial Day, but sometime around April or May timeframe, you'll see the current data start to come online. If you have a smartphone and you want to download the app, there is an app for smartphones, again, from the Swim Guide website, or you can find it, in Google Play or wherever you get your apps. But if you turn your location on, if you allow it to locate you, it will show you the nearest places, public access for swimming and water sports, paddling and things like that, and tell you what's clean and what's not. And the cool thing about Swim Guide is it is an international program. It's actually based in Canada. And one of my colleagues was in Italy last summer, 2024, and she pulled up the Swim Guide app and turned it on, and there were beaches in Italy that were being monitored by the Swim Guide. And so it literally told her, 2.5 miles away, here's this beach, and it's green. So go swim there.
That's great.
It's really cool.
I never would have thought that.
Yeah,
never realized.
It's a really cool program. So anyway, water may or may not still need volunteers for the coming summer. So I'll just put a plug in for that. We are usually looking for volunteers ourselves. Right now, our need for volunteers is in Macon County, but it's a lot of work to sample every week, and very few volunteers can sample every single week. So it takes a pretty big team to get it all done. So
I've always heard about the water sampling, and I never had seen any place where the results were displayed for the public.
Yeah.
So that's a really good thing to know about.
Yeah, and you can access Swim Guide through Mountaintrue's website and Water's website. There's links to get you there. So.
Okay, and then, what if you find some disturbing thing happening in the water? Do you go out to the landowners near there and directly contact them and say, this is what we found? And
yeah. So, it depends on the situation. So, and I'm not speaking for water now. So if they find issues in the Tuckasegee, you would have to go ask them about that. But from Mountaintrue, from Mountaintrue's perspective, what we would do is we would try and determine through additional sampling where the source of the E. coli contamination, the bacterial contamination was. And if it turned out that it was more of an agricultural scenario, we would work with our partners at the Soil and Water Conservation District or the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or somewhere, maybe Cooperative Extension, where they already have relationships with the landowners, and try to get, there's a lot of cost share programs and things like that agricultural landowners can take advantage of to make the water cleaner. And so that's kind of how we would approach that. If it's an industry situation, we would probably contact the industry and, say, hey, this is what we found. What do you have to say? And if they were willing to cooperate and help us figure out the issues and get them corrected, great. And if not, then we would contact the state agency, because those types of things are regulated by the state. So it just depends. If it's a septic system, then again, there's county health department, that we might contact, but we try to, partner and as much as possible, and so that everybody's resources are used efficiently. So.
That's good. I've always wondered how much coordination there is between different groups.
There's a lot of coordination. Yes, for sure.
All right. And what does a river keeper do?
Well, river keepers are I call it Riverkeeper with a capital R, which I am not a riverkeeper myself. I'm a lowercase r riverkeeper. We do the same things here in the southwestern region. It's just not through the Waterkeeper Alliance network. So they're actually part of a larger network that is international, that is a advocacy type of organization for rivers worldwide. But they do the same types of things. They sample water quality. They try to figure out what the problems are. They try to work, to get them resolved. So it's not that much different. It's just a title.
Where's the nearest river keeper to us?
The French Broad Riverkeeper, which the Pigeon River in Haywood County is part of the French Broad. So, yeah, Anna also Brook is her name.
Okay. The Tuckasegee doesn't have one.
Nope. And so, the Riverkeeper program really started out initially as kind of a industrial pollution, like looking at making sure that industries and municipal wastewater treatment plant and like piped discharges were in compliance with their permits. And it started, I think, maybe more in the northeastern United States, where there are just a lot of industries and a lot of, the main problems with the rivers at that time were to do with these point source discharges from industries. And so the Riverkeeper program has historically been in more industrialized or populated areas. Now, some of our rivers, like the Green River, don't have industry, so it's not exclusive that the Riverkeepers are only on those types of rivers, but that's why out in these rural areas we don't have as many of the Riverkeeper programs.
Yeah.
But again, Mountaintrue's our clean water team here in southwestern North Carolina, we do all the same things. And the good thing about us being part of Mountaintrue and the Riverkeepers being within Mountaintrue is the Riverkeepers sometimes do have resources that we don't have access to. But because we have the Riverkeepers within Mountaintrue, we can access those resources even for rivers that don't have an official Riverkeeper. So it's kind of best of both worlds.
Okay, that answers that question. Let's see. Oh, well, one of the things I have written down here is that we had this big debris cleanup after
Oh, yes.
Helene. Do you want to share anything about that with us?
Well, I mean, I moderated at the request of Water, I moderated the panel about the debris removal efforts that happened just last fall, kind of after things were already underway here in Jackson County. The only thing that I will say is that this was a situation that Mountaintrue ran up against that we were not able to have much influence over. And there are not very many scenarios that happen on our rivers that Mountaintrue is not able to have very much influence over. So it was not a happy day. And, things have gone much better in Jackson County than they did in Macon County and some of the other counties in the Blue Ridge region. I think we've never had a hurricane here, so
Right.
we've never had this whole natural disaster response from the federal agencies before, and I think we were all kind of blindsided by how it all works. I mean, it's a smooth operation. And so we learned a lot, and we'll be ready for the next time.
All right.
That's
Well,
what I have to say about that.
yes, being prepared for the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
That's-
unfortunately, there will probably be a next thing someday.
Yes. Well, that kind of leads me into climate change. How does Mountaintrue relate to climate change?
Well, I mean, we believe in it, and we definitely, our programs are definitely very focused on resiliency in the face of climate change. A lot of our programs, of course, are trying to mitigate it, but our visioning that we're doing right now, kind of post-Helene, when we got that huge contract, we hired a lot of people last year, and the organization grew exponentially very quickly. And so we're in the process of another kind of visioning or strategic planning of like, okay, at the end of 18 months, you know, where are we headed? And all of that is focused on climate, you know, how we can mitigate climate change in various areas, like on the forests, and then also how can we help not just the environment and the environmental communities and the rivers and the forests, but the human communities too. One of the things that I love about Mountaintrue is that Healthy Communities program. We don't say we're working on the environment out there. We're working on all of it, and humans included and human communities included, because you can't exclude humans. Everything's all tied together. So, so climate resiliency is a huge focus. It's kind of a lens that we use for across all of our program areas.
So what's happening with our national forests right now, from your perspective?
Well, you know, there have been a lot of changes that have come down from the federal administration within the agency and related to management policies and things, and it's kind of an ever-changing field, and so we haven't seen as many projects coming out from the Forest Service to be able to, you know, participate in and comment on. And I think just my observation is that it's because there's so much going on with potential reorganizations and changing of policies that in some cases have been long-standing. And so I think the Forest Service is just trying to respond and trying to figure out, you know, kind of what's the new normal here. And of course, the Forest Service, you know, there were huge Helene impacts on the National Forest as well, particularly Pisgah, but also some in Nantahala National Forest. And so the Forest Service, fortunately, has received a lot of funding and has been working really hard to put that on the ground in 2025. So
that's good to hear. I hear more about how they've had funding cuts and personnel cuts,
and there was that for sure. I think a lot of this funding that they receive for Helene relief is going to be contracted, you know, largely, because I don't see them hiring. I see other organizations that receive funding from them hiring.
I see.
So,
well, that's probably the easier route to go at this point.
well, and that's kind of how the federal government's set up these days, is to have less staff and more contracts. So.
Right. Okay. Well, tell me about 107. How Mountaintrue was involved in that.
Yeah, so I wasn't actually a part of Mountaintrue at that time, but I know that our Healthy Communities Director, Chris Joyelle, was involved in some way, shape, or form, kind of as a liaison between the community and the DOT. A lot of people didn't really understand, like when Department of Transportation proposed to put in bike paths and sidewalks, and the road path got a lot wider, of course, and people didn't really understand. They thought that it had to be so much more wider, and they were going to lose additional businesses because of the bike paths and the sidewalk. And I think Mountaintrue's role was kind of to help people understand that the road was going to get so wide anyway, and the sidewalk and the bike path are actually within that swath. Like adding those amenities, I consider amenities, for the community, was not causing the loss of a whole bunch more businesses, you know. And so it was just kind of, you know, we had the community relationships to kind of interpret the plans better than the Department of Transportation could do on its own. And so I think it was a lot to do with that. We did push on the Department of Transportation to have better crosswalks and things like that in certain areas where we felt like, you know, they would be needed, particularly for Western students. So, I'm not sure all the ways. Again, I wasn't part of Mountaintrue at that time yet.
Yeah, we don't, just the regular people in Jackson County don't hear very much about what's happening with 107.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking forward to talking to
Mhm.
some people from DOT who were involved in that.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
It
Which
just-
I think, I will say, kudos to our region, I think it's 14, Department of Transportation. I think we have the best DOT region of all the ones in the state. Mountaintrue has worked with DOT quite a bit on projects, particularly with regard to public lands, like the Corridor K project up in Stokoe and Graham County, where we're getting a land bridge. I don't know whether y'all have heard about this or
No, I've
not,
seen
but
it.
yeah, it's so exciting. It's halfway done. But anyway, DOT was very open during that project specifically to like hearing new ideas and investigating these things, and they ended up getting grants and winning awards for the work that we kind of did together up there. So anyway, I think that, you know, they've been as responsive as a state agency can be in light of needing to upgrade that road and make it safer and, you know, more modern.
Well,
So,
that's great to hear.
yeah.
That's cool.
So we have other things that we're doing specifically in Jackson County that I
Uh-huh.
can talk about
Sure.
if you're out of questions for the moment.
Oh, I'm not out of questions, but I
Okay.
just have to see.
Yeah. So in the Clean Water Program, so I mentioned that Watershed Association for the Tuckasegee River does the swim guide program, but we do have a microplastics water quality monitoring program that we have volunteers here in Jackson County that are collecting water samples, and we're processing them to screen for microplastics in our waterways. And so we do some water quality sampling. We also have an Adopt-A-Stream volunteer monitoring team up in the Sapphire community of Jackson County. Well, Sapphire kind of is in Jackson and Transylvania, but anyway, up in the Cashers area. That we hopefully will be expanding in 2026. And so we are doing some level of water quality monitoring. Another program that we're working on that we put more under the resilient forests is non-native invasive plant and habitat restoration work on the Jackson County Greenway. And so we've been having volunteer work days. We do that work in the kind of winter season because in the summer there's all these grasses and weeds and thorns and poison ivy and snakes and bees and all those things. So we primarily have our volunteer work days between October and April. And so we're right in the middle of that right now. And we've worked on several sections, taking out plants like Chinese privet and Oriental bittersweet and multiflora rose and things that not only are they preventing native plants, and particularly like the wildflowers and things that would naturally crop up along the greenway, but they're also a safety hazard as well because they have leaves year-round and they're like brushy in the understory. They form kind of a wall in the understory. And so on greenways like the Jackson County Greenway, you know, people that are up to no good can hide in there and, you know, be up to no good. So it's a great partnership. We do that work in partnership with Mainspring Conservation Trust and Jackson County Parks and Recreation and Friends of the Greenway. And we are also expanding our initiative with Friends of the Greenway and Jackson County Park and Recreation to offer more like guided outings and educational opportunities on the Greenway. And this coming Friday, January 9th at 1 p.m., my colleague Tony Ward is offering a winter tree ID walk on the Greenway. So that's a little bit of what we're doing in Resilient Forests. And then in Healthy Communities over the past, well, it just wrapped up in October. Mountaintrue was the fiscal agent and I was the project manager for an initiative to develop a conservation plan for the headwaters region of Jackson County. So this is District 4, if you're familiar with the commissioner's districts. So this is from Caney Fork, like East LaPorte Park area near Callie, all the way south and up the mountain to Cashers. And so that whole territory, we were able to raise funds, which Jackson County and the Tourism Development Authority contributed heavily to the effort to develop the conservation plan, and it was finalized in October, and the commissioners actually approved it in October. And so now we'll be working with them to hopefully implement some of the recommendations that are in that. And the purpose of the conservation plan was to highlight areas that are maybe more ripe for development, and other areas that are best left protected. And so the protected areas that are recommended, again, this is not any kind of zoning or any kind of teeth to this thing. These are recommendations for the commissioners to be able to bolster existing ordinances and or enact new ones if they want to, but this was all things that they will do in the future to incentivize development in the places that are more suitable for development, and to incentivize conservation in areas that have more like rare species or rare habitats or steeper slopes or things like that. There's lots of maps in the plan, which the plan is available on the county's website on the planning page. And so you can all look at it for yourselves. But there's really cool maps of the resources that are available in Jackson County. And, hopefully it will, there's a lot of local developers that care about conservation as well, and so we're hoping that this will actually provide tools for them to be able to be like, okay, this is a good place to develop versus this other place over here that maybe is not the best. So, and there's other things in there too, farmland preservation and protection, and incentives for that. It addresses dark skies and lots of other, I can't remember what all the conservation goals were, but it was about an 18-month effort, and so cool stuff.
Yeah, cool stuff, I agree. Yeah, I love dark skies. We have gone to a couple of places where there are dark skies, and it's really great to be able to see all those stars. When I moved here back in '76, I guess, you could see the Milky Way from my backyard.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately. But however, Jackson County does have a dark skies ordinance, and it's one of the few counties in the southwestern part, if not the only county in the southwestern part that has one. And what it does is regulate lighting, outdoor lighting and everything. But hey, that's a step in the right direction.
Oh,
So, yeah, it's great that they have that. So.
Well, I don't remember when it actually happened. It's been a long time. They passed a steep slope ordinance in Jackson County, and there was a subdivision ordinance at about that same time, I think. Have those actually worked out to, promote green spaces in subdivisions and things like that?
I'm not an expert, but the ordinances are still in effect, and they appear to be, being enforced. So again, I haven't dug into this topic to see if there's, any kind of major result, but I guarantee you it's better to have them than not to have them.
Yes.
So,
for sure.
And the conservation plan, the consultants actually did review all the ordinances, and they actually have a chart in the conservation plan that outlines them all. So it's a good way to become educated about what the county does have existing in terms of ordinances related to the environment and conservation, of course.
Great. Well, it sounds like things are working pretty well as far as the environment.
I think so.
What about fire resiliency and stuff like that? I'm not really sure what Mountaintrue has done or in that area, but I'm just curious.
We don't really have that as a focus. There is a FireWise program which deals with that kind of thing especially for development that is in proximity to public lands and things like that, but Mountaintrue hasn't really gotten involved in that sort of thing. I mean, we do promote, prescribed burning and things like that on public lands to cut down on wildfire risk in the appropriate places. There are a lot of communities that need fire for healthy forests and restoration, and we definitely support that. Yeah, fire on the landscape.
I've been trying to clean up my woods, but there's so much dead wood.
Yep.
It's
a big job.
monumental job.
Yep.
Can I ask you about some legal things, like
Sure.
the Endangered
I
Species
can't promise I
Act
can
and-
answer them,
well,
but
no, but I saw on your website that roadless areas and the things that some of the things that the federal government is wanting to change.
Yes, that was kind of what I was alluding to when we were talking about the Forest Service. There have been a lot of kind of directives or things that have been put out as possibilities and have actually offered a public comment period. So you named a few of them. The kind of big ones are the restructuring of the Forest Service, and what the proposal was, and I'm not sure where the things stand right now, but the proposal was to close the Southern Research Station, which would be that the Southern Research Station is located in Asheville, and the Bent Creek research area is part of that. And then in Franklin, the Coweta Hydrologic Lab, which is over 100 years old, they have over 100 years of watershed data and water research there, and they were proposing to close all of that and move all the research to Colorado, which I don't know how much you
Doesn't
know
make
about
much sense.
Colorado forests, but
Right.
I don't think it's possible to study eastern forests in Colorado. So, yeah, we were opposed to that, obviously, and so we sent an action alert out. And part of that also was to close the Forest Service regional offices, of which there's one in Atlanta. So instead of like National Forest of North Carolina, that chief currently reports to a southeastern regional forester in Atlanta, and instead all the chiefs would report to Washington, D.C., is my understanding. So again, I'm not sure. That's, our public lands and legislative folks have more of a pulse on that, so I'm not sure where it stands right now, but there was a public comment period, and we sent an action alert out for that. Then the next one was the repeal of the roadless rule. So the roadless rule protects, I believe it's 53,000 acres in western North Carolina on national forest. Basically, around 50 years ago, the Forest Service and folks in the public lands community, this is going to be a very Callie summarized interpretation of what happened, but basically they're like, okay, we have this very extensive road network on the national forest. If there are areas that don't have roads right now, we probably don't need roads there. So the Forest Service adopted a rule that basically inventoried all those areas at that time, and basically said we're not going to build any new roads for timber management. Okay. It does allow almost all of our inventoried roadless areas in western North Carolina and the Southern Blue Ridge allow for you to build temporary roads for things like fire, burning and invasive plant management and things like that need to happen on the national forest to keep the forest healthy. You just can't build a permanent road, and importantly, you can't harvest timber. So those are the main things that the roadless area protects. Many of these places are beloved, just awesome backcountry, places, and really beloved hiking opportunities and things like that. And so Mountaintrue, again, opposed to the repeal of the roadless rule, obviously. These areas are most of them are very remote, very steep. A lot of them have sensitive habitats and rare species, and again, that backcountry experience. Yeah. And then the third thing, let's see, I think you mentioned it. Now it's flown away. Repeal of the roadless restriction
Endangered
of the Forest
species?
Service. Yeah, in the Endangered Species Act. That one is, the changes to it I am least familiar with. This is the most recent kind of thing that's come about. There is a fourth thing, and that is rollback of NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act provisions. And so there have been kind of two different efforts that have weakened NEPA and made it basically, the Forest Service was told that earlier in last year that they didn't have to do certain parts of NEPA anymore, which one of the big things is they didn't have to do scoping. So scoping is typically where the very beginning of a Forest Service project, or any kind of agency, this Tennessee Valley Authority, all the federal agencies. NEPA comes into play anytime a federal dollar is spent. So this rule was passed in 1969. It was our first major piece of environmental legislation. And basically it said anytime a federal dollar is going to be spent, and so this is on public lands or not, whatever, if it's a federal grant, North Carolina Department of Transportation has to do NEPA if they're using federal highway dollars. So like it's anytime a federal dollar is going to be spent. It's basically, first you have to prove the purpose and need for the project. So somebody in an agency can't just decide, hey, we're going to build an interstate here. There has to be a purpose and a need, for that federal dollar to be spent. And then once that test is met, they put the project out for scoping. And what that does is say to everybody, the other agencies and the public, hey, we're thinking about doing this project. What do we need to be aware of? What are the issues that we need to be sure we evaluate in this environmental assessment process? Okay, so it gives organizations like Mountaintrue the opportunity to be like, hey, we know there's old growth here. We know there's green salamanders here. We're concerned about nutrient runoff into this river here, and put all these things out on the table so that the Forest Service can know them in advance. So as they go through the process of doing an environmental assessment or environmental impact statement, they can be sure to address these things before we get to the point of the draft of the document, and then the public comment comes in and says, hey, what about this? What about that? Well, scoping is the time to get all that stuff on the table. Yes. So these days they're not required to do scoping. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to do it, but if they're not required to, it might be hard to spend money to do it. And so that's going to majorly hamstring projects, and it's going to potentially force organizations like Mountaintrue into more of a litigation stance, because if things go down the way it seems like they're headed, the first time we will see these things is when there's a draft environmental assessment. And so it's just going to make it a lot harder to kind of turn the ship in a different direction if we're not able to have conversations before that point, because a lot of resources go into creating those documents. And so, once all that money's been spent, and, as a human being, if I've spent all this time, doing this assessment and everything, it's like, I don't want to turn around. Right. I don't want to change my mind. I don't want to throw it out. I'm invested, right? Yeah. So, yeah, that's unfortunate.
So they don't even have to say that we're starting a project until not notify anybody.
Right. Yeah, that's my understanding of the proposed changes. Yeah,
as you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah. So what can somebody like me do to support Mountaintrue in a lot of these efforts that you're working on?
Well, our voice is very powerful when we do have the opportunity to provide public comments. So the action alerts are very important. This is a very easy way for anybody to help, of all ages. If you have a computer and you can read and understand English, we're going to provide the information that you need and the resources and the links that you need to become educated about the topic, and we're going to provide sample language that you can use, and then we're going to encourage you to write your own letter, but we're going to give you the platform to do that. And so all you have to do is go on mountaintrue.org, and under We just have a brand new website, and so all the little menus have changed. But I think it's under Get Involved. Seems like that's where it would be.
Yeah, that
You can
seems-
sign up for e-news. And you can, and when you go to that form, you're going to have the opportunity to only sign up for the monthly e-news, or you can get action alerts and the e-news. I recommend that you sign up for the monthly e-news, just, as a basis, because that tells you all the activities in that region where you are. So like for Jackson County, you're going to get my e-news, and it's going to tell you all the volunteer opportunities, all the outings and things like that, as well as issues and projects that we're working on locally. And then the action alerts, you can tailor them by subject. So like if you're only interested in the public lands and the forests, or only interested in water, or only interested in healthy communities, or you can check all the above and you'll get action alerts for all the program areas. And typically this still doesn't amount to more than a couple, 3 emails a month. I mean, this past fall has been very different because all these things have been happening, and so we have had more emails, but it's all just like super important. And if we don't take the opportunity, then they'll just say, well, nobody's participating, so we don't need to do this anyway. It's just more ammunition to not offer the public comment if people aren't participating in it. So that's a very important way to get involved with Mountaintrue that, again, doesn't take up very much of your time and doesn't require you to go out on a Saturday and pull up thorny vines or anything like that. But if you're into that kind of thing, we need those kind of volunteers too, as well as the water quality monitoring volunteers. And I tell people, if there's a way that you think, whatever your skills and passions are, if there's a way that you think you can contribute, you can just call me and I will make sure that you can contribute, even if you don't see the way on the website. And we have tailored many things for individuals, and it's been fantastic. So.
Well, that
And we
sounds
also have a need for board members from the southwestern region. So we have had, historically, we've had up to 3, maybe even 4 people from this territory. And right now we only have 1. So we could use people to serve on Mountaintrue's board. It's actually seems like a pretty fun board. They have field trips out into the regions where they get to see the projects and other things. We don't have any dam removal going on in Jackson County right now, so I didn't mention that, but Mountaintrue is very involved in dam removal. We've removed several, especially up in the Watauga, really significant dams, and we're taking one out in Macon County, also a smaller subdivision dam. But anyway, there's lots of opportunities to go out and see the work and, engage with other people across the whole region. So if that seems like it might be your thing, there's an opportunity there as well. So.
How many times a year does the board meet?
So I think that it is, I think they have like 3 to 4 2-hour Zoom meetings that are the business meetings. Then they have a planning retreat, which is in February, and then I think they do 2 field trips that are Saturdays. So again, doesn't seem like an onerous amount of time. No. So.
Right in the core of what's happening.
Right. Yep.
I just remembered something I wanted. I got a notice not too long ago about Lake Hiawassee and what's happening there with the commissioners, is it, want to take land out of the forest around the lake to sell to private developers?
So that's basically it. In April, all 5 county commissioners unanimously signed a petition to the federal government asking that land around Hiawassee Lake, which is currently national forest, be made available for private and commercial development. And so this is very unfortunate from Mountaintrue's perspective, but actually a group of local people, Cherokee County residents, community leaders in Cherokee County, organized themselves, and Mountaintrue has been helping them with like online resources. We bought a domain called Public Lands for All, with the number 4, publiclands4all.org. And put their petition that they wrote online, but they basically developed a people's petition for people in Cherokee County to sign to say, no, we want to keep our public lands public. And so it's really cool. They have almost, I think it's 3,800 signatures. They just launched it on December 1st. And their goal was to have, I think, 1,000 signatures by December 15th. And they had 1,000 signatures within like 20 hours or something.
Amazing.
So, and it's really cool because it's people from all walks of life. I mean, there's hunters and fishermen and, you know, traditional environmentalists. There's people that just like to hunt for arrowheads in the around the edges of the lake when the water goes down in the summertime. I mean, it's just all kinds of people value that national forest around the lake, and it's been really cool to see everybody come together about it. And just kind of an interesting little follow-up, one of the commissioners that actually did sign the petition, I said it was unanimous, has now signed the people's petition and kind of changed his position, and he's actually not, his seat is up for re-election, and he's not running again. So anyway, it's been a large show of support for public lands, and I think Mountaintrue is, we put on that website because we recognized that there were going to be other people that were going to find this website and not in Cherokee County, and we didn't want to kind of water down or, you know, overblow their numbers with people who didn't live in the county. So there's actually a generic petition on there that anybody can sign, saying that, you know, we want to tell our elected officials that we support public lands, so that hopefully, you know, none of the other counties think this is a good idea and try to follow in Cherokee County's footsteps. So.
Well, that's quite a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the land around Hiawassee Lake, I mean, you know, there's a lot of private. We have 4 major reservoirs in the Hiawassee watershed. There's Lake Chattooga, Notley, Hiawassee, and Appalachia that are all large TVA reservoirs. And Chattooga and Notley both have a lot of private land around them, and there's a lot of development around them. Hiawassee Lake, not so much. And I feel like the reason why TVA ended up, you know, giving that land to the Forest Service or whatever, is because it's like really the banks are really steep, and it was a very steep like gorge that they flooded to make the lake. I mean, it's very deep and long and narrow, and it's just not, again, we were talking about on the conservation plan, places that are suitable for development versus not so suitable for development. Most of the land around Hiawassee Lake is, in my opinion, my professional opinion, not suitable for development. And so its kind of highest and best use is in this public commons that everybody can use for recreation and enjoyment. So hopefully we'll be able to keep it that way.
I hope so. Then there's funding.
Mm-hmm.
Is Mountaintrue funded mostly by donations from people like me?
I mean, not counting the contract for cleanup from the state and some, you know, funding for projects like the dam removals and everything, just like our operations generally and our staffing and our core staff and all of that. I believe it's 97% private funds, either from private foundations or individuals and folks that are members, event revenue and things like that. So we are pretty much primarily privately funded, and so yes, I think we have maybe 11 or 12,000 people on our email list across the entirety of Mountaintrue. So.
And that gives you more independence.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Gives us the ability to speak whatever needs to be spoken because we're not beholden. In fact, I think we're still, even project level, I don't think we take money from some of the larger corporations like Duke Energy, where we've had the battle with the coal ash in the past and things like that. I don't think we even accept or apply for funding for their programs and stuff. We try to stay as independent as we possibly can.
Well, I've really learned a lot today. Thank
Right.
you so much for
Yep.
sharing all this information.
Well, again, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to talk about the work. It's a lot of fun, and I mean, there's a lot to do, an impossible amount to do, but Mountaintrue is a great organization to work for, and I feel like we're pretty impactful with the number of people we've been able to kind of focus on the mission. So.
And is there anything else you want to cover while
I
you
don't
still
think
have
so.
the chance?
I actually forgot my notes, but I think I talked about pretty much everything we're
Yeah.
doing here in the county. Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank you.